I think I should turn around because that. Let's do that.
Much better.
I haven't given this much thought, guys. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I think I missed something funny. All right. Okay, I'm going to start introducing folks. So Josh Nisi and Megan Bell are co-owners of two independent brick and mortar bookstores in West Georgia. Underground Books opened in 2011, and it's an 800 square foot bookstore that is literally underground, a few steps below street level off of the historic town square in Carrollton, Georgia, home of the University of West Georgia. Underground Books is primarily used in antiquarian with about 20% new books. Hills and Hamlets Bookshop is a 600 square foot bookstore dealing in about 80% new books, opened in 2016. Kathy Graham is co-owner with Serena Wyckoff of Copperfish Books in Punta Gorda, Florida. They started their book-selling business 15 years ago in the garage, selling used books online. Now they have a full-service shop, almost 7 years open, and most of the books they sell are new. Kathy's background includes teaching high school, the U.S. Air Force, a couple of corporate sales jobs, and a Benedictine monastery. Frank Reese has been buying, selling, and trading used, out-of-print, and collectible books for over 35 years. First at Acorn Books in San Francisco, and since 1989 as the founder and owner of Acapella Books in Atlanta, which has earned Hall of Fame status from Atlanta Magazine, is annually selected in Creative Loafing's Best of Atlanta issue. In the 1990s, Frank served as president of the Georgia Antiquarian Booksellers Association. Since then, Acapella has focused more on new books and contemporary touring author signings, but carefully selected older books continue to shape the store's unique inventory. Shane Gottwals was born and raised in Macon, Georgia, attending Central Fellowship Christian Academy from kindergarten until graduation. He is a BA in English from Mercer University, spending a portion of his college years at Oxford University in England. He met his wife, Abby, at Mercer University. The couple opened Gottwals Books in 2007. Shane has extensive retail experience, which has helped Gottwals, franchising nationwide as Walls of Books, become one of the largest used new bookstore chains in the United States. Shane is currently on the board of directors of SIBA. So let's begin today's presentation with Josh and Megan.
Hi, all. So as Linda Marie said, we opened Underground Books, or I opened Underground Books in March 2011 as a completely used and antiquarian bookstore. And in that first week of opening, or maybe 10 days later, we say, Megan came in as a customer, and that's how we met. And then not long after, when she graduated college, she came on full time, and we got married, and we've been partners in book selling ever since. And then in 2016, a few years ago, we opened a second location about 40 minutes from our first location, and it's in a planned community called Serenbe, and we do mostly new books there with selections of our higher end rare and antiquarian books. So that's a little of our background. I started also, I think it was Serena, you said did also, I started selling just kind of as a hobby online out of my house, and then that gradually grew into Underground Books opening as a store. It's on the little historic square here, and it's 1,800 square feet, actually. So as the first person talking, I think it's worth mentioning that one of the things you'll see here is that there's an incredible variety of approaches to including used books in your business. I think there, even on the panel and probably in the attendees, there's people who, like for us, we started as a used bookstore and then started adding in new books. So used bookstores that are successful frequently struggle to source enough of the most in-demand books, so therefore you start adding in new books and you come that direction. And I think there's also a lot of new bookstores that are looking to increase the margins and going the other direction and trying to add in some used books. So I think we have that variety of approaches that people are looking at, and we I think represent the used books going into the new books, and that's kind of the angle we come from. So as there being so many different approaches, our approach, and one that I think for bookstores that are especially small, if you're new books only and you have limited space, I think our approach is something that could work. And our approach is we prefer to buy book collections from private homes instead of taking them in over the counter. We do some limited buying over the counter in our store, but our experience the first few years of doing that was that we got overwhelmed with inventory. And also our historic location parking isn't great. It's hard for people to get into our store. It's below street level. There's only one entrance. It's downstairs. So you would have people showing up with 10 boxes of books, stuff we didn't want, and then they're mad when you only want to buy 5 of the books out of the 10 boxes they brought. So it started as just almost a survival thing. We're sending these people out with negative experiences all the time. How about when they call and they want to bring 10 boxes, I just say, you know what, where are you located? I'll drive over there and have a look. So that kind of started that way. And then gradually I learned that that's our preferred way of buying. So we then we'll have, we're in a college town where how it started really is that there's professors frequently we would get their book collections. Professors, I think largely because tenure is becoming a thing of the past. They're moving around in lots of different jobs, and frequently people who are professors have lots of books. So we would get invited to, hey, I'm moving, I've got hundreds of books, I want to downsize these. I would start, hey, I'll just come over to your house and I'll shop from your shelves. And that's really become our preferred way of doing it. So then I'm not bringing books into the store in volumes that we can't handle, and all the titles we're getting are ones we actually want. So do you have anything to add about the buying?
It's also just, we have a small shop, so we generally just have one person on staff.
Right.
So your entire day can be,
Dominated.
like all your plans can be blown if somebody brings in 10 boxes of books.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do both. It's like we frequently still do. People will bring a box or 2 maybe in, and I'll do it at the counter while also trying to serve customers walking in. So
another benefit of buying in bulk collections this way is that the per unit cost can come down even more. If you're buying, several hundred books at a time, I like to just generally use a $1 a book guideline. If I know a book is a rare or valuable book, I'm like, oh, I've sold that before for $50, then I'm going to buy it for $10. I use a kind of 20% guide. But for the general store stock things, condition's the most important thing. It's got to be very good or like new, really good condition. Or if it's really unusual or rare or interesting, the condition becomes less important. And for us, the other thing about buying in the field, as we'd say, like at homes or estate sales or buying whole collections, is that we like to kind of curate our selection for more unusual stuff. It's kind of our brand, Underground Books. Like if you look at our website, it's quirky, scholarly, unusual stuff. And it makes for a interesting browsing experience, having those kind of unusual things that you might not find everywhere. And it can be more labor intensive. So I created a document about our used book sorting process. And it might be worth me sharing that image real quick, just so you can see kind of what we do when we say I go and buy 10 boxes of books somewhere, and sometimes we'll process them at home, where Megan and I are right now, in the evenings while watching Netflix or whatever. But sometimes we take them into the store too. So I'm gonna try to do this screen share thing that Linda taught me right before here, and it is that. So here's a chart showing up in the middle. Can everyone see it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we purchase a collection of used books, and then when we start to process it, it's really more organic than this for Megan and I. But when we're training someone at the store and how to help us process the collection, this is a tool we'll use. So there's things that you're getting a collection and you're like, oh, this is a classic paperback. It's a Pride and Prejudice or whatever. That's just going to be something that you're going to price and put on the shelf in your store. So that's one category over here, obvious store stock. You can just kind of sort that out and it's going to be priced and shelved in the store. Then there's a category of books that would be pre-1970 books tend to not have ISBN numbers. That's about when that started. So they require a little bit, if you want to determine their value, it requires a bit more of a manual search through different websites on the internet. So that we sort that into a pile for someone to look up. There's another category of books that do have ISBNs, but don't have a barcode. Maybe it's a hardcover that doesn't have the dust jacket anymore, or maybe there's a period where they were doing ISBN books before everything was barcoded. Those kind of have their own process. And then each of these categories have subcategories after you look them up. So like if it's a pre-ISBN book and I look it up on Books or eBay, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. If it's a kind of an unusual book, more than $20, we sort that out and it gets listed online and isn't even on the shelf in our store. Because lots of times there's such niche items, especially when you're dealing with scholarly books that you're getting from professors. It's hyper specialized. It's the history of Irish boot manufacturing or whatever. And it's not something that's likely to sell in your store, but it might be going for $25 or $50 online. We just separate those out completely.
We do have a selection of rare books in the store that don't go online, and those are things that are like, this is a beautiful copy of Pride and Prejudice that might be like $100. That's not going online.
Right. Yeah. Things that we know would be high demand. Like also like stuff like Easton Press, those like, leather bound collectibles that you see, those do well in our store and better than they do online. So I don't know, you can look more closely at this flowchart if you want, but basically the end result is they're being sorted out into store stock, things we're going to price, things that we're going to list online, things that we're going to store, box up and store, and then quarterly we do a sidewalk sale where we sell everything. We'll put several thousand books out on the sidewalk in front of our store. They're $1 a book, or you can fill a box for $8. And these are usually our record days. We do these 3 or 4 times a year, and we'll sell like it's exceptional. People follow our store for these sales, and they come from great distances to visit them, and are always asking us when the next one is. And then damaged books, we've done some presentations and stuff on this at SEBA. We recycle them into crafts. We make journals. We do buttons and magnets and things like that. That is also another way to. So part of it's almost like. There's this thing about how like native tribes would use every part of the animal. This is part of the thing is how do we extract maximum value of the collection of books that we come in? And this is the kind of diagram of how we would do that. So damaged books even we're trying to.
Can I ask a quick question, Josh?
Go for it, Frank.
So I'm intrigued by that last part, the damaged books, but I'm wondering how that plays when you said when you go to make a house call, you only are bringing back books that you know you're interested in. So you'll take damaged books from a house knowing that that's what you're going to do with it, or do
Good
they
question.
or what?
Sometimes I'm putting it here. Well, first off, despite our best efforts, books flood into our store. So there's never a shortage of the damaged books. Okay. But secondly, yes, if I'm in the field and there are books, it's especially this comes up with children's books, because frequently vintage children's books are a wreck. They're right. Basically unsellable, but they're cool and they evoke nostalgia. Yeah. So there's frequently like collections of children's books, and we'll just tell people, especially when you're doing house calls, most of the time people want these books gone. Right. So I'll say, here is 10 boxes of books I would like to buy from you, and here's the cash offer I'm going to make. This stuff over here I cannot buy, but I'll take all these if you want them gone, and then we'll take them and we'll tear them up and make them into journals, or whatever. We put them in our dollar sales for our sidewalk sales. We'll just box them up and store them, and we do less of that anymore just because we're overwhelmed and get a lot, and
for the sake of our backs.
Yeah, we want to do this a long time, and
what is you talked about the size of your stores, but what about your storage facilities? How much storage space do you?
Well, we kept a like 1,200 square foot off-site office warehouse space for several years. When we opened the second location, we got rid of that, and we have a finished outbuilding at our home that's I think it's 800 square feet or something like that, and we use that as storage. So we'll box things up and bring them to there after a purchase, and then gradually feed them into the different channels.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, good questions. Are there other questions?
Well, maybe we'll get through people's presentations and people can ask the questions to the chat.
Okay, where are we? Is it time for the next person? Are we?
Did you have a couple more things you wanted to say before we?
Oh, I know. The one thing I wanted to say about determining value, that's also one of the documents I had. Do you want to? One of the things about people always ask us, especially because we specialize more in the rare and antiquarian, is how do you determine a book's value? The biggest thing is we have customers come in all day, every day, bringing us a book. I saw this on eBay for $500. And it's like, that doesn't, you've got to look at the sold values of things in order to determine a book's value when you're processing them and researching them. And the only free way to do that is through eBay. eBay provides past sold records for 60 or 90 days or something like that. So you can use the advanced search methods in eBay to look at what items have sold for. You get pretty good information on that for relatively common collectible books.
Sell a lot.
Yeah, it might be like vintage or uncommon books, but things that aren't terribly rare. You'll find sold records in the last 90 days on eBay. We use several sites. One is WorthPoint. That's kind of the most kind of all-purpose one. Another one's Rare Book Hub. These are in the documents we share. You have to pay, and they're not terribly cheap. WorthPoint's $20 a month, and Rare Book Hub is $365 a year. And they provide detailed and accurate records going back decades of the sold records for books. So that's what we use for guiding pricing of the vintage and more uncommon titles. And that's an important thing to know.
Yeah, also we'll look at places like abooks.com or eBay just for looking at what is for sale. We try to advise people to look for ABAA dealers. That's the highest caliber of an association of rare book dealers in the United States. And if they have $500 on something, then maybe you could value your copy a little less than that.
Yeah, so there's several trade
look for
associations.
reputable
Yeah, there's IOBA, the Independent Online Booksellers Association, and they have a logo next to their sites on AbeBooks or eBay. And then there's the Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America that Megan just mentioned, of ABAA. If you see those two logos next to listings, then you can be a little more confident that those prices will be accurate when you're researching things on AbeBooks and things like that. Yeah, okay.
That's it.
All right, well, let's move on to Kathy next. I think you're muted.
There it is. There it is. Good. Thanks. And I'm sorry, I fell off the computer a minute ago, so I missed your intro. I wanted to ask you guys, do you sell new books as well? Or are you all used?
We do.
Yeah, we started as only used in Antiquarian, but gradually added in new books.
Okay.
And our main location is probably 20 to 30% new books.
Okay.
And then our second location that we opened is 80% new books. But it's
Oh,
kind of
wow.
focused
Okay.
on architecture, interior design, food, things like that.
Okay, great, thanks. Good, I asked that because I wanted to segue, maybe it'd be helpful because I know we're talking about the audience of a lot of new bookstores wanting to integrate used books into their shop. That might be something new for folks. So I'm Kathy, Copperfish Books, and as it was mentioned before, we have had our brick and mortar store open for about 7 years. And 6 years prior to that, we did online and antiquarian books online only, and also, in antique malls. So we didn't have an open shop then. We sell new, used, and antiquarian, although we call them antique books because antiquarian sounds like aquarium, and people don't know what that is. And also, we're sort of taking the kind of a nostalgia view. I think you mentioned that word, that we sell a lot in our town just because, when I was younger, I had that book, or this is the cool factor too as well. A little bit more about the shop to give you a sense of it. We have about 1,800 square feet in the store, probably about 20,000 books and about 5,000 non-book items. So that's about an 80-20 ratio at this time. And then off-site, we have another 5,000 books lined in the hallway and in the garage and all that. You can't tell people outside the industry, okay? We are a super seasonal store with a short, intense high season running from the holidays that are coming up now through March. So from January to March especially, we are running like rabbits, and that's the peak. And in April, it drops off dramatically. And in the summer, especially August and September, it's like the desert, both hot and very quiet. We do a lot of events, and we're known for that in town, to keep the pot stirred up and keep people paying attention. And it does help us, especially in slow times. And then also the used books has helped us a lot. So, our ratio, our new used ratio, when we first opened the store, we were completely used books. Except for we brought in some self-published local authors, did those on consignment, and then we started purchasing Florida books to supplement our inventory. We even had, this was my favorite, we even had an antique room where we sold furniture and prints, vintage items, sort of like when we used to be in the antique malls, and so that was a carryover. But that's now gone, so we've expanded our other sections in the store over the past years with new books, especially in our children's section, which we never believed we were even going to sell, so that was an eye-opener. So new books in children's, new books in fiction and nonfiction, and also in Florida. That's where we've increased the most. I would say our suspense mystery still stays pretty much used. Those are popular used, as does the classic romance, although we have introduced contemporary romance just recently that are in new books only. So what was I going to mention else about that? Oh, we do sell new release hardcovers as well, and that was kind of something new for us when we transitioned from old and used to new. We do offer them at a 20% discount all the time so that we can sell more, and that continues to increase. And our locals, and in fact, now expect us to have the latest titles. Our new used ratio for books is about 60-40 at this time. So we're more new than we were before. And we expect to I think we expect to get it to be around 70 or 70-30 in the next couple years. We're not sure exactly what that sweet spot ratio is for us, but 70-30 is where we think we're going to be. The journey, I guess, for us, the transition from old to new has been that we noticed an increase of demand for new titles. So we were bringing them in, and then we started offering author events, and so we realized we were selling more dollars, and so we were chasing the dollars, right? We brought in more new books, and in fact, as I saw the trends, they just increased dramatically over the years. So I'd say in the last 5 years, to put some numbers out there, our new books increased from like 40% to 75% in a 5-year period, and the sales dollars were even higher than that. So we were paying attention to that. But as I'm preparing this just to talk about today, to talk about used books, it was an eye-opener, and I saw where our expense dollars for new items have increased dramatically. So we all know that, you know it in your head, but when you're really looking at the numbers, so within a 5-year period, our expenses on new items went from about 60% to 90-95% now. So we're only spending dollars out of our pockets 5 to 10% on used books. And while the sales volumes increased with the new, those numbers to me do make us want to take a look at our used books again. So it makes me say, we used to, let me back up a minute. We used to have a really strong online presence with used books, and that was helping our margins quite a bit. And we used to actively search for books like you were talking about, but we just ran out of time when we're trying to run a store, especially when you're doing new books and events and things like that. So we have to ask ourselves, what profits are we missing and why? And maybe for us, it might be to get back to selling higher end used books online, or maybe doing a better job of curating the used books in our store, which we started doing recently. But I'm going to tell you this, believe it or not, we just pulled out, we pulled out a couple of entire sections, and that would be the inspirational romance, Christian fiction, and our arts and design, which was a hard thing to do. Book lovers, we like to have certain sections in there, but they just weren't selling. They were mostly used. We pulled them right out. So it is a constant evolution, as we know. Okay, that's how we got there. In terms of what we've learned for used, I'll just give a few points of each, and then the rest you can take a look at the sheet at the, what's it called, the brain.
Your brain trust.
Pure Brain, yeah, that's it, thanks. So trade program is something that I never knew we would do, but I would say consider a trade program. It really helps you to bring in a lot of books. They walk into your store that way, and then you're not laying cash out. And get the books that you want, do trade credit, and we've got a lot of details on our website that you can plug into and check it out and steal some ideas if you'd like. But if you like to buy them, I'm like you guys from Underground Books. We have kind of a 20% rule for the higher end books, for the antiquarian and rare books. We'll go a little bit higher if it's something we know we can sell really fast. or it'll bring a lot more money. But for general stock, it's 10% or maybe less. If I'm going to do the work of hauling off all the books from the estate, then sometimes we get that for free. They just say, please take them. I need my house cleared out. But it is a lot of work, and it does break your back, and then your house gets full of books, or your storage unit or whatever. So you want to keep that in mind. I echo the condition. Condition matters a whole lot. We just bring in gently used books, and that is really a plus. A lot of our folks will say, wow, these look new, and they like it. And we just kind of stay to that. So, stay away from the tears and the writing and the tanning and all of those. And maybe pricing could be helpful. We generally price paperbacks, and we mostly take in trade paperbacks because we want general stock. And that's, we price them about half price or so, and then hardcovers a little bit less than that. We don't take in a lot of hardcovers unless they're collectible. What else could I tell you? A few other points. More isn't better, so don't hold on to them forever. If you're going to integrate used books in there, space is limited unless you have a big warehouse to put them in. So just be selective. And again, avoid trying to pay too much. Condition, back to that, if there's smoke in the books, it'll never come out. I learned that the hard way. If you've ever taken an entire estate, and I have done that, confession, yeah, it's just too much to deal with. You have to really get rid of most of them as well. Couple of points about the antiquarian books, if I might say. We have a section, antiquarian books, because I love them, but also my job is to make sure they sell. Our job is to make sure they sell. But there is a cool factor, and there's a ooh, wow factor, and we have a nice display cabinet that has some of the higher end or more delicate ones in there. And then the rest we have a few categories like American literature, poetry, children's, some really just things people like to buy. And we're noticing a lot of younger folks coming in, they just want to buy really neat old stuff. So if you price them right, I'm trying not to think like a higher end antiquarian book dealer, but someone with a shop who has someone in front of them who wants just a cool copy of Jane Austen, then we make sure that we can supply those. We also carry some things of interest like postcards and small ephemera, maybe little statues or bookends, and that helps that section quite a bit. Couple other things. Old and rare doesn't necessarily mean valuable. Old and rare doesn't mean it's going to sell, so be picky again on what you acquire. One thing I've also learned is for the more expensive books, don't hold out for the highest price if you're going to sell them online. Sell them, move them on, let the person who buys it enjoy a good bargain, or the dealer sell it at a higher price to a client that they may have. So there are lots of different things to look at. I think I'll stop here because there are a lot of things to say, right? But one I will say is if you really want to do more of the antiquarian or collectible books, and you want to become more of an expert in those, because that's very different from the general stock in the store, right? I would go to the Colorado Antiquarian Book Seminar, or check that out if you've attended that. It's an awesome week-long intense seminar, and you can learn a ton of stuff. I went there in 2008 and learned a lot. So I'll stop right there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, we just wanted to say that we have also our CABS alumni, and they just moved to Minnesota.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah, it's now they're now at St. Olaf College.
okay.
And so I guess we're gonna have to start getting used to saying MABS.
It's outstanding. Yeah, we both Megan and I have done it, and one of our staff people as well. And there's lots of scholarships, so
Yeah.
we'll check that out.
It's totally worth it.
All right, well, let's move on to Frank of Acapella Books.
Well, just like I wasn't prepared for where I was going to set my computer up, I really haven't prepared anything, but what you guys have said has reminded me. I went to the AB's book school in Colorado in 1984, so I didn't realize it had moved, but it was valuable. And one thing I heard there all those years ago, I still remember and repeat quite regularly. A dealer said, just remember, the rarer the book, the rarer the customer. So, so we, our journey has been somewhat similar to what both of you have described. We started or really exclusively used, out of print, and antiquarian. And because of the point you made, Josh, you wind up in any situation getting customers coming in asking for specific authors, specific titles quite regularly that you can never stock new, that's what led us into going ahead and starting to stock a few authors and titles here and there. And really the internet, when it really changed everything for us in the early 2000s, I guess, is when we felt like we needed to go more into new books. And I think, I'm not sure if Shane went in this direction or not, but I do think it'd be really interesting to hear from a bookseller who started as a new bookseller and added used books and has done it successfully. Because I can imagine, and I've actually observed, I think, where it can be a challenge and create some problems, because I know we sure recognize a very different mentality or psychology of the customer who comes in a store expecting there to be the latest new bestsellers or contemporary books, as opposed to the psychology of the customer who comes into a used or out of print bookstore because that's what they like. So we learned the hard way, making every mistake you can as we were making that transition. And here we are, probably 15 to 20 years down that road, and we're now probably 50-50 in terms of book titles in the store, new and used. Revenue obviously is overwhelmingly new because new books cost more. But the margin is, and I will say, my father has a bookstore. He started after me, the Alabama Booksmith. I always need to make that clear because I didn't grow up in the book business, but my dad liked the antiquarian and out of print bookstore so much, he opened up the Alabama Booksmith in Birmingham just a year after I opened Acapella. And he very quickly realized that for a lot of reasons, he preferred the new book business and the signed books of, author appearances. And he eventually just did away with used books altogether, kind of what Kathy was suggesting, because it's a challenge to do both well on a big scale. And so, or at least for, if it's a small business, it's tough to do on a big scale, both of them well. I just could never let go of them because I love the used books so much, both aesthetically and the margin, and so I've never been able to let go of it, but it creates that constant tension that Kathy talked about. Where do you spend your time? Where do you, not just your dollars, but where, how do you allocate your staff, labor time and costs? And I can't say that I've really solved it. I expected to be talking to you from my store today, but I never got out of my house this morning because there's so many things I've had to tend to with upcoming events. And so I do think you need to respect how much time used books can take. And if you're trying to do both, I think you need to be prepared to work a lot at both of them. And I think it's probably a mistake. Well, you're not going to do as well like we learned when you're just doing a very small number of new books in a used bookstore. You're not going to really do it very well. And I think vice versa. If you're going to just have a small section of used books to take advantage of a particular topic or the margins, I just think you're going to have a hard time doing it well. So I think if you're going to do one or the other, you need to find a way to be able to do both of them with a lot of focus and have a lot of either people on staff who really know what they're doing or learn how to do it all yourself. Since I didn't, a lot of what you guys said, I'm struck, as different as our stores are, as a lot of the basics of what you guys said are all very, very similar observations, experiences you have, the percentages that you can pay or the circumstances where you might not pay as much or you might pay more. It's a pretty consistent experience that I've had with used books. I have found too what you said, Kathy, young people, and well, you guys are young, so I mean, young people do seem to be getting into old books in a way that surprises me and it's gratifying. And so I think we've even seen in the new book business a recognition of that, where some publishers are publishing books to kind of evoke some of the aesthetics of older books. So it's all, there is a way to blend them all, but I do think that you go about it so differently that I find myself having to kind of, if I'm going to spend a day with used books, I just have to, like almost turn a switch off in my brain to kind of remember I'm doing this now instead of that, because they really do work so differently. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, I know you'll help out in the question part too. So let's go on to Shane.
Yeah, so Gottwal's Books, I mean, just a super quick story. We started in 2007 and we had 1,500 square feet and not a clue as to what we were doing. My wife ran the store all the time. I was working at an electronics store, and I taught high school English for a while and math, and just trying to make things work. It took us a solid year to really figure out where we were headed, and then probably 2 years before we could really feel like it was time to grow. We never envisioned what we did past the four walls of that 1,500 square foot shop. What's really neat is we're actually in the middle of a move of that original location from 1,500 square feet to 8,400 square feet. We've purchased an old bank, 2 stories. It's just, we get to take these 12 and a half years of experience and put it all into this flagship location. It's going to be just a really neat thing. So we're posting pictures and stuff on our Facebook page if anybody wants to look at that stuff. But our ratio, we started out 100% used. We had this is before we had SEBA to hold our hand. It was before we had any mentors. We just knew one man, Jim Barkley, many of y'all know and have known over the years. But we really didn't have anybody in the business to tell us what to do, or really tell us how to get set up with wholesalers and all this and publishers to get these books ordered. Certainly not doing events and that kind of thing. Over time, we realized just the need for new. It started with Harry Potter for us, Harry Potter book 7, whatever year that might have been right after we opened, and realized, we've got to order these in. And from there, we're probably, as total revenue, 25% is probably coming from new. In stores, inventory floor space, probably 5% or less of actual floor space is new, but we're very careful to curate it properly so that we can really turn a good volume. And we do events and things. So we're essentially doing both. And we're trying to grow the new side even more and more. Our buying philosophy very different from Josh and Megan, who went into it in detail just a little while ago. When it comes across the counter, we're trying to bring in as much as we can. For one thing, we didn't finish about Gottwal's Books, but we have 4 stores that we own that are called Gottwal's Books. And then Linda Marie mentioned our franchise operation. That's a dozen more stores that are nationwide, all across the U.S. About to do one out in Seattle too soon, and one down in Florida. So we're just DC. We're just all over the place. So what we do is pretty systematic, but I try to be really careful to say when we're a franchise. We first announced we were a franchise, and we got a lot of flack online and bookseller groups and things because they just said, bookstores are not meant for franchising, and we get it. What we're trying to do is just establish business principles and forms and processes, but each store is very unique. So I just want to get that out of the way first. And they even have the autonomy to make these buying decisions and decide what ratio of new versus used they want to do. Like we don't tie people's hands in their bookstore business. But when it comes across the counter, we want to evaluate it. We want to get our hands on it. If something is not in the greatest of condition, for our in-store sales, yes, condition is very important, but we will also sell a Louis L'Amour Western that is fairly rough because just the clientele is fine with that. Some of them haven't been reprinted, so that's the only way you can get it. So it varies by category. And I know all of y'all that do used books now, you do some of that. So I would suggest not having a real hard line on a certain condition across the board because some things need to fluctuate. We have a software called NitoScan that we recommend that we use that tells us, is this book valuable for selling online or not? Just automatically we scan it in. It says yes or no, basically. And so we can accept a book that is of low quality. When we would sell it online, we would just list it in that low quality and sell it that way. So we're bringing in a lot. I mean, but we also have a 50,000 square foot warehouse. We also have these new stores that are opening. So we need the inventory. We buy by tractor trailer load. I mean, we buy books all the time, just in bulk from various sources. We'll buy out stores that have closed. So just our process for doing it is a lot different. But I do recommend some kind of software that will simplify the trade-ins coming across the counter evaluating, because there's just only so much we all can know about what is going to be sellable, what's going to be popular, that kind of thing. Shelving them, we've always had a policy of doing new separated from the used in the store. So those of you that are looking to add used for the first time, it's a hard call, and I've said it many times. I don't think there's a right answer one way or the other about that. It's just something that you would fill out. I suggest starting separated, and then over time, maybe integrated if that's what your customers seem to be calling for. Our store credit system, we evaluate the books for credit. They get a credit on a slip that's used. We slap one of our proprietary store stickers on it with that amount. That credit can be used to pay for up to 50% of the used book purchases they're getting from the store. So that varies across the four of us that are talking right now, just how our process works for that. But our credit is only good on secondhand books, and it is only good for up to 50% off. The other half is always paid out of pocket. Integrating all this with a point of sale. I mean, we've decided that we only inventory our new stock, and then the used ones, because of the volume and just, like our 8,400 square foot store, we should end up easily with 100,000 books in it. Our average franchise store starts up with around 25,000. Will grow to maybe 35,000 books, maybe 40,000 books for an average store. It's just very difficult to keep that sort of order. We're just careful about how we categorize things, so that when you do have to go hunt for a book on the shelves, you know pretty well where it's going to be. And plus, we feel like that invites the customers to shop with you and maybe look at things that they might not have looked at otherwise. So some of the brief motivation for us not inventorying everything, but the new books, they all have barcodes. They have printed MSRPs typically, for most all of them. It's just a lot simpler to do an inventory for the new, much more complicated with the secondhand anyway. So the time involved just hasn't been worth it to us. We don't do antique books necessarily. We will, sorry to give up the secret, Josh and Megan, but we have a couple of friends in the industry like Josh and Megan and a couple others who we will invite to our main warehouse. And they're the only ones we deal with. It's just essentially 2 or 3 different dealers to come in and look at anything that we have that's old. So just one strategy for y'all, you could bring them in, and then if you happen to know a rare book dealer, you could deal with them one-on-one. If you're going to bring it in on a credit system, it's not really costing you, depending on how your credit system is structured. And then you can maybe have somebody that you deal with directly about buying those. Just a thought. But we've definitely morphed. We're carrying all these new products. Like Kathy, we were selling antiques and stuff when we first started. We were just trying to sell anything that sort of fit a bookstore environment, a used bookstore environment. Like old marbles and old like horse saddles and like weird stuff, just weird. We don't have any of that weird stuff. We do have new and used books. We do a lot of like Lifeways of clothes. We do a lot of Christian products, church supplies, stuff like that. We're now doing teacher supplies. So that's kind of how we've changed. So that's my encouragement. Like to close here with my 6 or 7 minutes here. Like figure out what it is that your customers truly want, and know what it is you want out of adding used books before you add them. Like what's your purpose? If it is truly just the bottom line and adding revenue, you can't just add 8 linear feet of shelf space to used books and say, okay, that's gonna, I got great margins on those. No, you really have to get a good. You don't want to be known as the store that does new books well and has some used books and they do it at about 30% speed. Like if you're going to do it right, be cautious about it. Like even Kathy said, you could start with things like regional books, do those secondhand like she did, starting out with just those new. You could do the reverse and just put your feet in the water a little bit with used before you dive in. So anyway, that's all I got.
Well, thank you. We have a lot of questions. So one person is asking, how do you factor in shipping costs for your online sales?
I'll take that. We do. I saw somebody ask. We do sell online on everywhere we know. We don't sell on eBay very often because of the having to manually enter every book. It's rarely worth the time. We do sell some on eBay, but on Abe, Biblio, Alibris, and Amazon, we use Basil, and Basil allows us to upload all of our books to all those services, and we sell through all of them. Shipping generally is set by them, and so I think it's $3.99 that Amazon allots or charges the customer that passes through to you, and it can vary on the others. We on Abe, we do offer free shipping, but we basically just up our price by $3 or $4 per book to cover just to be able to say it's free shipping, but our prices are a little higher on Abe than on the other sites. International shipping can be problematic, and so we just we don't do international shipping on any other websites. If you order through our website or through the store, we just calculate that depending on what it costs. But generally, if anybody's having us ship through our website or from our store, we charge $5 for the first book, media mail, and we add $1.50 to each one on top of that, which we kind of calculate covers the postage and covers the time and labor materials to ship.
Does anyone else want to chime in on that?
We offer free media mail domestic shipping on all sites, and we sell on our own website, Abe Books, Biblio, and eBay, and Amazon.
Yeah,
But-
we just calculate. We just add $3 to $5 to the price of the book, and then you have free shipping.
Yeah, it's kind of more of a marketing, the way
Yeah.
you're presenting the cost.
Yeah, just air quotes are what's important because they're just looking for the lowest total price when they're looking at the options to buy. So when you say factor it in, you really don't factor it in. Like, I mean, some of ours we list with free shipping, but it's $8, and some it'd be $4 plus $4 shipping. It just
Yeah, I mean, the different sites
Yeah.
have different ways of sorting the results, and some of them favor free shipping a little bit. So it's basically a marketing thing. It doesn't
Yeah, I
really
think
matter.
I think customers like the idea of free shipping.
Everybody likes the idea of free anything.
Let's move on. The next question is, for those that offer book credit for trade-ins, do you have any restrictions on how people can use it? We did hear from Shane about that.
I think we're really unusual because we do not have any restrictions. We're very selective about what we take in, but once you have store credit, you can use it on anything in the store, 100%.
Yeah. And as has been pointed out, that doesn't work very well when the customers choose to get a new item, but we're so conservative in giving out store credit and what we take in that taking the occasional hit on that, especially we only do store credit at our main location that's 80% used, it's only 20% new. We find not having this like complicated list of you can apply it to this, but this and 50% of that, it's easier for us. I think we're like maybe the only store I know of even that does no restriction-free credit use.
Well, there was a store back in the day at Oxford Books in Atlanta used to do that policy, but they didn't, they weren't selective, and they did have a massive selection of new books, and that was one of the factors that put them out of business because people would bring in 10, 15, 20 boxes of decent or not decent used books, and they'd come out with several $100s of book credit, and they'd go buy a brand new book that cost Oxford 60% of that. So it's you point out an important thing that you have to restrict it if you're going to do it. We do offer credit for new books, but we adjust it. So we offer cash for books, we offer credit for books. But the two different kinds of credits we offer, we have a used book only credit, which is obviously for used books only, and we give 50% of what we calculate the books to be worth. If we offer you anything credit, which you can use on new books as well, we only offer 30%. But I appreciate that it can get complicated when you have a lot of different rules, but at the outset, we just pretty much say, we think these books are going to bring in $100. Which would you prefer? $50 in used book credit, $30 in anything credit, or $20 cash? And they decide, and then it's pretty simple, moving forward.
Makes sense.
And I should say that we do cash for college textbooks, and that's a whole different subject. I strongly recommend doing textbooks, and those college students don't want your book credit. They want pizza money. So that's why we do cash for those. But we have a system for doing that. But that is a lucrative market that I recommend for all of you that are doing new only or even new and used. I mean, you can do new only and buy college textbooks and send the college textbooks out the door through selling online, never even have them on your shelves. So just
Yeah, you have to be selling them online though, for the most part.
absolutely.
I'll add one little piece here too. We have restrictions and it's used only, used for used. And we were worried at first how people would react, but once they got used to doing it, then they just know that's the rule. And then we use Basil also, like I think Frankie used Basil, and it makes it super easy to do trade credit. Nobody has to keep tabs on it in a notebook, or it just automatically takes it off on used books. We set it up that way. It's great.
And for years, we did used only credit if you're going to take the credit. And I was always scared because I remember Oxford, and I was always scared of that happening to me. And what made me change was as I started having more and more new books, to the point where most people coming in my store perceive it as a new bookstore, then I was starting to get a lot of disappointed customers say, yeah, you get $50 credit. Oh, okay, I'll get this. Oh, you can't get that. Oh, then I'll get this. You can't get that. So I just had to find a way, because so many people would prefer to get a new book. So I did the math, and I think I did it right. By giving them 30% of my conservative estimate, I think we're not making a lot of money on those, but we're keeping happy customers and we're not losing money on it.
How do you all ensure that your used books don't undermine new book sales? Do you ever think about that in the way you buy?
I don't understand this.
I'm always, the margins are better on the used books. So, I mean, in some ways, I'd rather sell the used books. So I'm not, in a way, for us, in the used books coming to the new books, we started adding new books because we hated having customers leave disappointed that we didn't have the the things that were in high demand. But there's times we've talked about in the store where we're hand selling something and we'll have accidentally shifted a purchase from our customer who puts down the used book and then buys a new book. And we're like, well, wait, we just sold this low margin item instead of this high margin item. What are we doing here? We just shot ourselves in the foot. So I think it requires a change. Oh, go ahead, Frank.
You might have sold a $25 new item instead of a $5 used item. So.
That's possible, but usually in this case, it's like a trade paperback that we sold for $16.95 instead of a $8 or $9 like new used copy of it that we paid $1 for or something. Then it's like, I mean, in some ways, I think it's a hotly debated topic. It's true. If you sell a $25 book that you paid $15 for, rather than an $8 used book, then yeah, you made $2 more. I suppose that's true. But I think if you're doing, it's also easier to sell an $8 used book. So I probably can sell 3 $8 used books in the amount of time I can sell one $26.95 new hardcover, because everyone coming in with looking at, like, 80% of the people that look at that new hardcover are like, I can get that $10 cheaper on Amazon. So it's like, it's just easier to move 3 used books that are high margin than it is that one new hardcover.
Well, and I think the question, if I'm understanding the question, like, I want to bring in, Kathy mentioned a $16 trade paperback that they'll sell at half. So you put it at, like Josh was just saying too, so, $7 or $8. I think if I had to make a recommendation about somebody wanting to get into used that is new only right now, I would say start with general fiction trade paperbacks and pick that one category. That's going to be pretty, popular stuff. It's just, you have a better shot at that, and you don't need a deep insight of doing it. The undermining part would be is if you start pricing those things at $5 or $6 and they're competing, and then you have too many customers that say, well, I'll just wait until you get a secondhand copy. And then they turn around and don't even buy the $16 copy that you have on the shelf because they think it's going to show up later as used. So I would go that route, but price them higher. So maybe put, $9.95 on them or something, somewhere where it's not so low that you're going to just eat yourself alive by people hoping that you're going to get any used. Maybe take down my number and call me when a used copy comes in. No, if it's within a $5 difference, they would more than likely say, well, I'm just going to go and pick it up because there's no telling when you're going to get it. And then you have that messaging too. Like, we don't know when a used copy will come in. And I would even say, don't do a wish list for used books so that you don't get into that mess either. Because that's our policy. We don't write down any names and numbers. We say, keep checking back.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of strategy, I think, if you're gonna get into it.
Do you all shelve your new books next to your used books?
We blend everything.
Yeah.
Well, we don't right now. We separate them right now, but we're gradually integrating them.
Yeah, I'll say we separated ours for a long time. We would display our new books as we were building inventory. So remember, we were going from used to new, and we'd put them on tables to display. All the prime new stuff was faced out and on tables. And just over the summer, because of the way our inventory has gone, where we've got more new, we're running out of space. We're integrating right now. We still showcase the new books, but they're integrating.
I would say in classics, which I think is also another good place to start doing used. They're mixed in, except for like decorative classics, which are featured. But most of our new books are face out
Or on tables.
Yes, we have all, when we started doing more and more with new books, that one of the first things we realized in the different mentality was face out. We never did face out books when we sold nothing but used books, because like Shane said, you organize, really fine tuning your organization, and you're alphabetical, you're by subject, and the kind of customers who came in, expected to see the spines out. When we started selling new books and realized facing out really leads to selling books better, we have blended, and for the last 10 years, we can say if it's face out, it's new. If it's spine out, you have to pull it off the shelf and figure out whether it's new or used. But we are in the process of separating them for the first time ever to create one side of the store being new books and one side of the store being used books. And that is, again, I think in response to customer confusion. It's just people just don't perceive how many used books are around them, because what they see are all these face out new books. So we'll talk to me in a year or two, and I'll let you know how it goes. I'm a little, I have some concern that it's not going to be a good move, but it feels like the right move, because there's so much. It's just going to be so much clearer to help the customers understand where the new books are and where the used books are.
I have one last question. How do you connect with antiquarian book dealers in your area if you want to work with them?
So there's a couple places, depending on where you are scattered around the country. You can go to the abaa.org, the Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America website, and they have a tool for finding specialty, the antiquarian rare book experts in your area. You can see if there's any of them there.
Yeah, but I would say, that's our specialty. We're not ABAA dealers yet. It just hasn't made sense for us to apply.
It's expensive.
Yeah. But another way you can do is look for the trade association for your region. So like we have SEBA, there's regional associations for antiquarian and rare dealers. For instance, if you're in Georgia, it's Frank used to be the president of the Georgia Antiquarian Booksellers Association, and they have a list of their association members.
Yeah, and we're also happy to answer questions and offer any. That's people throughout SEBA, we already get people contacting us regularly asking for stuff, and sometimes we can answer the question directly, or sometimes we'll recommend a colleague that's in their area.
Yeah.
So we're happy to answer that.
Well, thank you for offering to be mentors.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we love about being booksellers is how generous everybody is in the community. We've had lots of mentoring ourselves, and are happy to give that back.
Well, our hour has ended. Thank you all so much for attending, and several of the people presenting today gave me some resources that I've put up in the Pure Brain Trust. So check them there. And we've also recorded this webinar, so you can check. We'll probably have it ready next week if you want to view it again. I'll be here for office hours until 5 o'clock if you want to stick around. But otherwise, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now, and that is the official end of our webinar.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.